Hello, everybody. I am Priya Rao here with VineRoutes and having a great chat with somebody I've just met here in person, well, virtually in person, but who I've admired from afar for many years. Carrie Rau, who is a chef, sommelier, and a Master of Wine candidate. Plus, let's add on some of the other things that she's doing. She's a WSET Wine Educator and co-founder of Vinequity. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I am super interested because I am part of the wine world only as a lover of wine. Really, my goal is as a host. Like I like to entertain people, and because I like to throw dinner parties and cocktail parties, for me, the love of wine came through and appreciate my love of food and how to
Mhm.
complement that and to make those experiences across the dining table or at cocktail parties, how to elevate those experiences. And I think you have somewhat of a similar kind of foray into the wine world. So, can you just give us a brief summary of your culinary background and how that led you into the world of wine?
Sure. I went to the Stratford Chef School, so I am a Stratford, Ontario. That was my hometown. And when I decided to go to culinary school, I worked at a few restaurants and really fell in love with it and decided, of course, there's an amazing private college in Stratford, and I went there. And honestly, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. First day of chef school, I basically started poaching lamb's tongues. And so I thought that was incredible. And from there, basically just learning about wine in chef school kind of grew my love for both. But at that time, it was in the early 2000s, so there wasn't a lot of access to wine education. And it wasn't really until I moved to Toronto to start working in restaurants that I was able to study. And so it kind of grew together that way. But I think the Stratford Chef School kind of instilled that love of the whole dining experience. So being able to make sense of the meal with wine and how they complement each other. So it's been a real lifelong kind of learning about how food and wine pairs. And I find it fascinating. So,
Yes, as do I. And I learn a lot from people like yourself who are at the kind of at the epitome of your respective careers. So you have this huge background in the culinary world. You're a trained chef. And then
mhm.
you have moved into the wine world, really embraced that to the point where you're going for your Master of Wine certification. So let's talk about that and where you are in the process and what's the training for that been like?
I did an exam. I'm out of it for a little bit, and you kind of go back into it. So it's a very, very hard program. That's all I'm going to say. You really have to go for it to fully embrace it, and it shows you a lot of areas where you need to continue learning. So that's been really great. And yeah, I'm addicted to education. Obviously, I think I've been a student for years and years and years outside of my profession, and I also love to teach as well. So being a teacher is really great to kind of understand how you can learn and then how you have to give back that information. So yeah.
Can you explain for some people who may not know the difference between Master of Wine and a Master Sommelier?
Sure. Basically, a master sommelier is someone that is kind of more focused on the dining side, but I mean, there's all sorts of academics that are involved in both. And I think it's just a different career path. So master sommelier, you're definitely have that huge service component that you don't have in the Master of Wine program. The Master of Wine program is really about understanding wines all over the world in every market and sales channels, and you kind of go through all the different papers that apply to wine from when it started out in the vineyard all the way through making it, quality assurance, the business side of it, social and economic issues around that. And yeah, you just write a lot of papers and you do a lot of tasting
Right.
and help hopefully kind of master the skill of self-study. So it's a learning process for yourself as well to see what you can retain. So
Mhm.
it's pretty incredible. But
And now
Yeah.
you've talked about how you've moved to Prince Edward County, love the wines of
Hmm.
the county area, some fabulous wineries out there, as well as cideries and breweries, some really good stuff happening there. Um, but you're also moving into a position where you'll be front of house as well as assistant sommelier. So you're now sort of
Yes.
moving into the service portion of that world. So is this new for you? Is it a return to some roots when you started your wine journey? What's that transition going to be like for you to get back into that side of things?
Yeah, so I had a really amazing job when I was in Toronto, working as a research and development chef, and that was kind of more of a freelance job. And I worked there for 7 years, and I loved it. And it gave me the opportunity to go to school and also work other positions in the industry. I think that it was really scary for me to step fully away from cooking. That was a big deal. I'd been cooking for 22 years and to fully commit to wine 100% was this journey to Prince Edward County. So that was really, really cool. But during my time in Toronto, while I was freelancing, I was able to work in restaurants. So I worked at Vela, which is it's an incredible restaurant down on King Street, and also Grand Cru Deli with Master Sommelier Bruce Wellner.
Yeah.
So that was a wine bar. So I was able to do some stints with that. But when I started doing my studies for the Master Wine Program, moving to the county and working for a winery to understand wine production was very, very helpful for me. It kind of gave me a full circle idea of, the wine industry, just having that part in my career. But you do get a little insulated sometimes, kind of, studying the area. So I'm really excited to continue my studies and to kind of keep my brain fresh, especially as a teacher. So yeah, this is going to be very exciting to step into kind of a front of house role again, and just to be able to taste wines. We have a big focus where I'm going on Prince Edward County wines, but
Mhm.
it'll be great to kind of taste everything else and again bring that love of food and wine pairing and kind of guess what try to help guide the guest to an ultimate kind of sensation when you get the dish and the wine together. So that'll be really fun for me.
Right. Isn't
And
that
also
like,
chaotic. I'm excited to get back into the chaos of
sure.
service.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
I'm sure it can be sometimes chaotic if you have like a few different tables, even trying to get
yeah,
your time and your attention at the same time. But
yeah.
talking about the pairing and the magic of a really good pairing, can you tell us a few experiences that you might have had where you were just like, oh, wow, this pairing has just elevated both the wine and the food?
Yeah, I mean, I think learning cheese production at the winery I'm working at right now was super, super interesting. Kind of a really fun add-on to my culinary career. Um, and I think that the sparkling wine and fatty, salty cheese is something that should never be underestimated. And a really amazing experience I had once was Elise Lambert, who is a master sommelier and from Quebec.
Yeah.
She did a tasting of Quebec wines, and I believe it was through a George Brown sort of experience. I can't remember exactly. It was a couple years ago, but trying some beautiful Quebec cheeses with Quebec sparkling wine, and I thought that that was absolutely incredible. So it goes to show you the beauty of sparkling wine and how structurally that can pair with so many different things and can really highlight and shine on the dish as well as just being able to, basically pair with so many different things makes it very versatile. So I really love that kind of thing.
Sparkling wine, I would say, is maybe the one style of wine that can take you from appetizer all the way through to dessert.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it so magical. It's definitely one of my favorite styles of wine for sure. So,
Now, you were just talking about Quebec wines paired with Quebec dishes, and they often say what grows together goes together. Now, you come from a Indigenous background, a Cree background, and
mhm.
would you say that you have found any great pairings with Indigenous cuisine that you want to talk about?
Well, I would say not really too much. I was raised again in the 60s scoop, so I was placed with a family. And I wasn't raised around a lot of indigenous foods. But I definitely have tried to figure out what that kind of dining is. And I would say it's a lot of game meats, right? So you have a lot of proteins. You can definitely have a lot of really rich reds. But I think what would be exciting would be to have like an indigenous winemaker make wine on indigenous land, and then be able to pair those dishes with local game. And that's something I think we're getting closer to each day. But I haven't quite seen it yet, quite in Canada.
Right.
So, but there are some amazing indigenous chefs out there, and that might be something fun to explore.
And what about in terms of the landscape of the wine industry itself? Now, as one of the founders of VineQuity, obviously it's very important to you to see representation in the industry. How would you say the industry looks now compared to when you first entered it? And what do you see as the future in terms of the evolution of the landscape and how it represents the communities?
That's a great question. I would say that being back of house for many, many, many years, there was always people of color, and that makes up a large part of the culinary landscape. And I think that we're definitely seeing, over the last 20 years, a lot of those faces moving to the front of house, which is wonderful. And global cuisine. I mean, it's important to we definitely create a lot of those dishes here in Canada, and we have such a multi-diverse community. So I think it's important to celebrate all of that a lot more. And I think with groups like ours, even watching the seven of us kind of continue along in education, getting to those higher levels, and the amount of people we're supporting with scholarships, we're definitely moving those groups higher and higher. And, we'll see it a lot more for sure. So I'm excited to see that. And we're already seeing a bit of a rise in that, especially through the scholarships and the amount of education that people are taking right now. So it's really great.
Yeah, it is great to see the impact that VineQuity has had in such a short time. And just anecdotally, I know that myself, I entered sort of the wine industry, I'd say about 14 years ago, and a lot it has changed quite significantly. I remember being the only person of color. Actually, no, that's not true. There was always one gentleman there who was, I think, also of a South Asian background, but I was the only woman of diverse background. And now, when you go to the tastings or to lunches and dinners, it's really representational of the community at large, and it feels right. It feels more right
Yeah.
than it did back then. Do you have that sense too? And do you get that sense from some of the students that you talk to? Like, how does it feel for them now compared to students you might have taught at the beginning of your wine teaching career?
I think that people are just more excited to see faces of representation everywhere, and it makes you feel a lot safer and more bold and confident. And I think that's great. So yeah, we just want to continue keeping that going as long as possible. So yeah,
Well, and I
I
believe
think it's so exciting.
it is exciting, isn't it? I know. We share that sentiment for sure. You have a bottle of wine that you're gonna show us and talk about.
Yes. Yes. So I have lots of lovely wines in my collection, but this is definitely a little piece of history. So this is Kita Wines, if you can
Mm,
see that. I have a terrible camera on my laptop, but so Kita Wines is a winemaker. It's made by a winemaker named Tara from the Chumash tribe in California, and she no longer makes this wine, but it was an indigenous wine made on indigenous land by indigenous people, and it's a really important piece of history. She continues to make wine under Camins to Dreams, which is wonderful. I'm lucky to have a Pinot Noir, I have a Cabernet Franc, and a couple whites left. But once this wine is gone, it's gone. But I'm hoping that we can have other indigenous winemakers continue. I think it's really the full circle 100% made
Mhm.
indigenously. We do have some winemakers that are indigenous winemakers that are on reserve land, but they're owned by corporations and etc. And I know that there are things in the works. So this is a wine that I'm definitely excited about. So this is a Pinot Noir from 2014. I really should drink this, but I'm holding on to it, and I'm going to find a special time when I can make a fantastic dish to drink with that or to
I
eat
was
with that.
actually just
Sorry.
going to ask you, like,
So
you're holding on to
yeah,
a time capsule, basically, a piece of
yeah, a
history
little bit of a time
instead.
capsule. And I love Pinot Noir. I really do. It's one of my favorite grapes. So I think this would be wonderful with some, and I'm a big fan of duck. So that's probably something that I will do, some dish with that. So yeah,
Well, you'll have to let us know how that tastes once you finally pop that cork. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you, Carrie. Thank you so much. As we leave, can you give us something that you're looking forward to in terms of the wine and food, the pairing of good wine and food? Like, what do you see on the radar?
I'm I think that right now I'm seeing a lot of people not drinking as much, which is really interesting. Um, but and I think there's a lot of creativity for non-alcoholic options with dishes. And I think that that's the next landscape to hit to try to figure out pairings and etc. And there's a lot of winemakers that are making beautiful kind of non-alcoholic wine styles. So that'll be something interesting to play around with and to kind of master as well, because I think all of it is really important for the dining experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
It will be
yeah.
very interesting to see the evolution of non-alcoholic wines, and I think there's a huge interest for it. And of course,
Yep.
wine itself will always have its place because it is, in essence, a time capsule. Every bottle is a time capsule.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I hope that wine doesn't go on the downturn. I don't think so. There's always going to be a community like us that love it. So I will definitely promote both for sure.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Carrie, and we look forward to hearing more about the exciting work you're doing. I'm going to have to come down to Prince Edward County and visit the restaurant where you're going to be working in.
Perfect. We'd love to welcome you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.